When I was 13 years old, I went to my mom and I just informed her that I was now going to be vegetarian. On my part, this was probably a little bit selfish because there were 6 other people living in the house at the time. She could have just denied me and said, nope, that's a little too much work. But instead, she was very excited and she said, JoHannah, this is going to be something so fun for us to learn together. She said, we're going to work to figure out how to make some old favorites new again. That's what happened. From that point on, we'd always been very close, but our bond became even closer when we started creating together in the kitchen. She gave me 2 very important pieces of advice that day. She said, number 1, when you're going to someone's house to eat, never show up empty-handed. Instead, bring enough food to share and make sure it's delicious, because you got to win them through their taste buds. She said, number 2, always remember, food is a great way to show who we are instead of just what we like to eat. Isn't that an interesting idea? Food is a great way to show who we are. The words themselves were maybe a little new to me, but the philosophy was something she'd been living for quite some time. Let me tell you about that. Dating back to the late 1960s, she and my dad were living here in Fort Wayne, and they had a couple of little kids at home. Some neighbors had moved in down the street, so Mom did what was the traditional thing to do at the time. You know, she showed up at the house with a fresh baked pie to welcome them to the neighborhood. She didn't know until she got there that those people had actually come from another country. The wife did not speak any English. But because of my mom's kindness and hospitality and warmth, they felt so comfortable that they would return the favor not too long after that. The wife actually had a request of my mom. She wanted to know if my mom could help her to learn standard American food, right? Fried chicken, mashed potatoes, and gravy. But if she could also maybe help her to learn English. My mom was just a housewife, but she was more than happy to take on this challenge. But she did not want to just teach her something. She wanted to learn from her. So they came up with this really cool thing where they actually swapped cooking lessons. So my mom would teach her some traditional things, and in turn, she was learning how to make the authentic cuisine from this woman's home country. For us growing up, what a cool thing. The reason for that is that wasn't the last time Mom did this. She actually went on to do this with a few other people. So we were growing up not just with that fried chicken and mashed potatoes and gravy, but authentic Greek, Mexican, Italian cuisine. More importantly, those people were in our lives. They were part of our circle. It was such an honor. So if you fast forward a little bit from then, I'm in my early 30s, I'm still vegetarian, and I had developed some very serious health issues. I had endometriosis, which was something that you would be basically bedridden in pain a few days a month. I also had extreme allergies. The doctors told me to be prepared that by the time I turned 40, I would have to have a full hysterectomy. I didn't like the news, so I didn't really want to take it lying down. So I started talking to all kinds of medical professionals. I started talking to alternative health professionals. I started reading and absorbing everything that I could. I found out that one of the leading causes for these issues was dairy. Why dairy? Dairy is cow's milk that is meant to make something the size of a dog grow into a 1,200-pound animal within a year. Also in this country, cows are currently producing about 50% more milk than they were only 25 years ago. It's because the demand is so high, the farmers have to pump cows full of growth hormones to increase production. The human body is not meant to break that down. I was shocked to discover that animal products, along with byproducts, also linked to the two other leading causes of death in the US: heart disease and cancer, both of which run rampant in my family, both of which claimed lives of very close relatives. You would think that knowledge would be enough for me to flip a switch, go from vegetarianism to veganism. It's not that big of a leap, right? I was the quintessential cheeseaholic was the problem. It didn't matter if it was cheese in a can, to be honest, or the most expensive blue cheese you buy in a store. I would show up for it. I couldn't think about just giving up this one thing I loved so much. So I had to learn more. I had to keep researching and keep figuring out what were some other reasons that I needed to think about making the switch. They were plentiful. The next were the environmental reasons. 9% of all greenhouse gas emissions are directly linked to animal agriculture. 1,800 gallons of water are needed to raise 1 pound of beef, which means you can either take showers for 2 months or you can eat a hamburger. 80% of the water that's consumed currently in the US is used for animal agriculture. 1 acre of land is needed to raise either 50,000 pounds of vegetables, which feed a multitude of people, or 250 pounds of beef, which feed a handful of people. Last but not least is deforestation. In the US alone, to date, over 260 million acres of forest have been cleared for animal agriculture, not to mention what's happening right now on a global scale. The last was the main reason most of my vegan counterparts transitioned to begin with: the animals. Before I share with you any statistics, we're going to pause and we're going to take a 10-second silence starting now. During that time, on a global scale, 15,000 chickens, 200 cows, 160 sheep, 200 turkeys, 400 pigs, and 1,000 ducks were killed. During only 10 seconds, these 6 types of animals, 16,960 of them were killed. Not to mention the atrocious lives most of them are living up until that time. We have animals in 2 very distinct categories: pets and everything else. If you or I see a dog on TV that's been beaten or abused or abandoned or starved or used in a dog fight or tied to a tree and left in a hurricane, we are outraged. We want justice for that dog because it's a horrific, horrific thing. Did you know that a pig has actually been shown to have the same level of intelligence as a 3-year-old human child, which is much more advanced than a dog? They're much more loyal, trainable, smart, extremely entertaining. And as a bonus, they're actually hypoallergenic. One is a pet and one is breakfast. Think about a cow and a horse. They're both large, land-dwelling, herbivore mammals. They're trainable, extremely fun. If you think about eating one of those two, you're a little disgusted and a little horrified. Isn't it funny I don't even have to say the word horse out loud because that's what we were thinking? Because collectively, society has taught us it's perfectly fine to eat the cow. Society tries to tell us that there's a difference. But I challenge you today to think for yourself. Is there really? For me, ignorance was no longer bliss. It wasn't bliss for my health, for this planet, or for those animals. I had to make a change. So I did. But I was left with this quandary. Now I had to figure out how to make all that food all over again in a new and different way. And how in the world did I talk to people without seeming abrasive or angry or unapproachable? And it was there the whole time. Those words my mom told me. food is a great way to share who we are instead of just what we like to eat. Who was I? I hope I'd become more compassionate and kind and empathetic, and I wanted my food to be like that. So I very literally got in the kitchen and rolled up my sleeves and started experimenting and trying and playing, and it was so exciting. I was showing up at people's houses just bringing them food. But more importantly, I was opening the door and I was having people over, and we were having these honest conversations about why, as a society, we're so tied to a certain food, so much so that we get offended if people think we are told that we shouldn't eat something. And I get it. I was born and raised in Indiana, farm country USA. I grew up on a small farm. I understand if we say anything negative about agriculture or farming, it feels like we're insulting our relatives, people who paved the way for us, generations of people who loved us and who we love. But farming is not what it used to be. I was shocked at the amount of people that started talking to me and asking me questions about this journey. I was blown over as the years went by. People who informed me they had themselves transitioned to veganism. They had their own reasons. Maybe it was their health or wanting to leave a planet for their children and grandchildren, or maybe it was their conscience over consuming animals. But one thing we all agreed on: vegan food can be absolutely delicious. That was 10 years ago. What's happened since then? Well, I did kind of become my own superhero. I took back my health. I've never had to go under the knife. All of my conditions have reversed themselves, and I haven't even had to take an allergy pill in years. In my 40s, I feel better than I have in my entire life. More importantly, I like to think maybe I'm a little bit of a hero for the planet and the animals as well. My mom would have been so excited. Every time I was trying something new in the kitchen, I thought, man, she would have loved to have tried this with me. Unfortunately, she passed away 20 years ago from cancer. When she died, she had never worked outside the home secularly. But 400 people showed up to her funeral on a raining, cold February Indiana night. They lined up outside so that they could come in one by one and give their respects. Many of them told us their story in very broken English. I remember I was sitting one night and I was digging into my favorite food, spanakopita, and I said, I love this. And Mom said, JoHannah, we don't love food. We enjoy food. We love people. All the people, all of the time. They say you die twice. Once when you physically die, and again when people stop saying your name. I say there's a third time, and that's when your legacy and the things that you stood for are no longer remembered and no one carries it on. My mom wouldn't have cared if you ever remembered her name. That's why I didn't say it, because she wouldn't have wanted me to told you. Anyways. I don't care. If I leave this stage and I walk out of this building and no one remembers my name, what I do care about is that someone, anyone, carries on that legacy. And what is that? Kindness. No matter what social media does to try to divide us, no matter what box society says that we're supposed to fit into, never let anyone or anything build any sort of wall between us and any other living being. Show love and compassion and kindness and empathy. Yes, show love to all the living beings, all of the time. Thank you, Fort Wayne.